Hey there, grade six. New math video for you guys today. We're going to move on in our geometry stuff to the next few lessons for this week. And we're going to start at G6-17. It's called Designs and Transformations. And below we see that there are some learning targets. The first one is to identify transformations used to create patterns and designs. And the second one is that we will be able to use transformations and combinations of transformations to create patterns and designs of our own. And so here's where it kind of starts. It says, by repeatedly using one or several transformations on a simple shape, we can create beautiful patterns and designs. And one of those beautiful patterns and designs is right over here. This is called a freeze pattern. And so the question that we're sort of asked to consider is which part of it actually repeats to create the design. And so what we're going to do is I'm just going to, we're going to try to look and say, well, this part here, and then maybe up over to that. So this section here is what actually is repeated over and over again. And so that's the section that we see repeated again. And so if you draw another line over here, that section gets repeated, and then it's over to here. So there's three repetitions, there's three repeating parts. Now the question at the bottom says which transformation is used. Now we have learned about translations, we've learned about reflections, and we learned about rotations. And so if we look carefully at this one, all we see is that that pattern, the freeze pattern, is moving to the right. And so it's being just slid over. And so it's being just it's translated. It's a translation. Okay. And so they're going to ask us to look at some of these patterns. And again, the question is, what is the smallest part that creates the pattern? And so if we look at A, we can see that the smallest pattern here is this. It's the hexagon and the triangle. And then over here, it's maybe a bit trickier to tell, but the pattern that gets repeated is this stuff. And so that gets, there is a transformation that happens. Okay, so up in A, if we identify that it's been rotated, that's what's happening. In this one, we can say that it's either been reflected, or we could say that it's been translated. So sometimes these kinds of transformations, there's more than one possible answer, and we'll see that when we work on stuff, or when you guys work on stuff in the book. If you want, actually, what you can do is you can just pause it here for a quick sec. And you can actually just work on number one in the workbook. It's on page 60 in your workbook. And then when you've done number one, you can hit unpause and just carry on with the video. But what we're going to do is we are going to get a chance to look at maybe a bit more of a geometric design, straight lines and shading, etc. And the exercise here says to create a design by repeatedly rotating the shape 90 degrees clockwise around point O. Okay, so here we see this is point O, and so a 90-degree rotation, if we think about if this is, a line 90 degrees, would go a quarter turn like that, or a quarter turn, like that, depending on where the shape starts out. Okay, this is probably gonna end up looking kind of messy, and I do apologize for that. But my new shape is going to look roughly like, so that's my first one. That is going to be a 90-degree clockwise rotation. Okay, and then if I do it again, 90 degrees around this point, okay, this will be the shape. And again, I apologize for this, for the lines here, but again, this is going to be a 90-degree rotation. And then if we do one more, 90 degrees clockwise, it's again a quarter turn. And then so what I've done is you end up just kind of creating this nice pattern, this repeating pattern. It's kind of like a windmill sort of shape. It's kind of cool. Anyway, so that represents 90-degree clockwise rotations. There's a couple other problems. This one says to create a pattern by repeatedly rotating the shape. This one says 90 degrees counterclockwise, and again, it says around the top right corner. So that's going to be up here. And so that's going to go counterclockwise. And so my first shape, so it goes a quarter turn counterclockwise. And now so that stuff's going to be up here. And next one, again, so here's my rotation point. I want to do 90 degrees, so quarter turn counterclockwise. And so my shape is going to end up here, my little shaded part. And then I want another 90 degrees, so again, top right corner. And so this is going to go out this way. And that's where that shaded part, I'll do one more. And again, here's my rotation point, top right. And again, I do apologize for the non-straight lines. I do like seeing when you guys work on this stuff in your workbooks neatly with rulers, but I don't have a ruler with my digital tablet. Anyway, so that's 4 rotations again to create this sort of repeating pattern. And notice how the shaded part sort of changes locations. I'm almost 100% sure that I got them right. Yeah, pretty sure. Anyway, so part C, it says to create a pattern by repeatedly rotating the shape 180 degrees clockwise around the middle of the right side. And so that midpoint is going to be right here. And so I suppose one of the nice things is that my shapes are just going to all kind of build to look like this. So here's the first rotation, that's 180 degrees. So here's the midpoint over here. And again, here's number 2. And then it's really about figuring out where that shaded part is going to end up. And I'll do a couple more. So here's midpoint. Here's the next one. And we start seeing some repeated patterns as well, right? So that if you're doing a 180 degree rotation, I'll do one more, then the shaded part just kind of goes like top left, bottom right, top left, bottom right. And so it's helpful if you try to notice those patterns, because that makes drawing out, particularly in your workbooks, drawing them out a bit easier to sort of identify. Actually, if you would like, you can pause it here for a second before we get into this next part. You can pause it here and you can work on numbers 2 and 3 in your workbooks. Those ones kind of deal with like one rotation and then repeated rotations around a point. So just practice that stuff. Look for patterns. Remember what we talked about, what we learned about in terms of how to do rotations. It can be a bit tricky if you don't keep it straight. But then when you're ready, when you've done those questions, you can unpause it and pick it back up. Because where we're going to look now is at reflections. And so we can create reflections. This one says to create designs by repeatedly reflecting the shapes in the given mirror lines. And so there's these 2 dotted lines that are sort of intersecting. So we have a vertical line and then a horizontal line, and what they would like us to do. And again, this is going to be a little bit messy. I'm trying to keep it straight, but I'm going to reflect. Okay, so I will reflect it across, first of all, a vertical line. I will reflect this shape across this horizontal line and try and keep it as straight as I can. So that's a reflection, and then I'll do that last one there. Now this one, again, you can either say I'm reflecting it across a vertical line, or I'm reflecting the green shape across the vertical line, or I'm reflecting the purple shape across the horizontal line, but that's the shape that you end up with. And so it's kind of a nice little cross pattern shape. This one will be a little bit interesting. So I'm going to do the across the vertical line first. And so that goes up here and then 2 to the right, because I'm trying to make a mirror image. Okay, so that's the first reflection. across the vertical line, I'm going to reflect it. I'll do it across this line. And then the last one in the bottom right corner. And now I've done all these reflections either across vertical lines or horizontal lines. And so what you can do, if you would like, you can pause it here and you can work on number 4 and 5 on page 60 and then pick it up again because we're going to move on for a couple more slides. And so this one, we have to identify the part that repeats, and then the second thing we have to do is identify the translation or transformation that was used. Then it says we have to identify mirror lines and the centers of rotation. Okay, so for example, if we look here, okay, so the part that repeats, we could say is maybe this shape here is what gets repeated. Now, I think this one actually could have a couple possible different answers, but that's the shape I think that gets repeated. And so this shape, this green shape here, the first thing that we can say is, well, it's being translated to the right is one thing that we could say is happening. The other way to look at it is if you want to keep it really simple, you could say, well, these are the two parts that are being translated, and that stuff's just being translated to the right every time. That's probably the simplest way to do it. You could also look at it that these three shapes are being reflected, and then this horizontal. Let me change color for a second to red. This horizontal line could be your reflection line. Okay, so like I'm saying, there could be more than one answer. But as I'm running a little short on time, this one is maybe a bit more straightforward. First of all, this stuff here is what's being the transformation, and these are all just reflections across vertical lines, and so that's how we would write that down. Okay, so a couple more. They're going to stop being geometric for a sec. Oh, right. And so this one is it's a rotation, and the rotation point. There's a red line there that doesn't belong, or red dot there that doesn't belong there. The rotation point's kind of roughly right about here, and then here. These are all these rotation points, and they're all being rotated 180 degrees. Okay, so we show that with dots. This one, again, is, these ones are being reflected, and these are the reflection points. Okay, and so what you would do is you'd have to identify, well, sometimes there's only one transformation happening, sometimes there's two. And so if we look here, this one is, I would say, first of all, there's a couple things happening. You could say it's being reflected, first of all, across a line here, and then it's being translated to the right. So there's actually two things going on here. I'm almost out of time, but you're going to need to identify that basically on 61 and 62. Identify transformations, and then describe them, and then maybe draw some extra ones out. But for now, that's kind of all there is. As I'm last few seconds. This one again, reflection. This one again is also reflections. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. If you haven't been pausing, you need to work on 60, 61, and 62 in your workbook. Other than that, have a great day. Thanks for watching.